Lake Mary Boulevard, which at the time was a 2-lane road, and Sun Drive was a dirt street that was there. But we were there at the church, and we finished that space, 2,500 square feet on the bottom floor. That was the largest gathering place in the city of Lake Mary. City Hall in those days was what is today the City Museum, that little gray building. That was City Hall. There was no event center, okay, for Lake Mary. There wasn't any of the hotels, any of that kind of thing. The place that was built was the place that we built. And we built it as a community center from the very get-go, that it would be something that everybody would be able to come to, that everybody would be able to be there. Well, in 1989, I was volunteering as a baseball coach. I had started that right away in 84 and been doing it for 5 years by the time 89 came along, and my oldest son, Ben, had just started playing ball a little bit before that. But there was one of the gentlemen that was also a baseball coach was Ed Suggs. And everybody in Lake Mary knew Ed Suggs. He had been chairman of the director of the Chamber of Commerce. He was, active in all the things that happened in the city of Lake Mary. And out of the blue, his high school-aged son, who wasn't quite 16 at the time, contracted heart failure. And the doctors said he really needed a complete heart and lung transplant. Now, those of you who can remember back to 1989, that was not done then, okay? And it especially wasn't done in this country. It had been tried a few times in England, but it had never been done in the U.S., and it was not allowed. And so I was talking with Ed, and I already had known him for these few years and coached ball with him. He was not a church attender. He didn't go here. He didn't go anywhere. His family didn't go to church at all. But he had this problem. And I remember coming home and telling my wife, as I looked at our 4 healthy kids, I remember saying, it's just not right. It's a bad thing. It shouldn't happen that they have to go through this. So how do we act justly? A group of people from Holy Cross formed a committee, and we started to help the Suggs. First of all, tried to apply for insurance and found out that his insurance wouldn't pay for that kind of surgery. But we found out that there was a foundation that would give a grant to pay for that kind of surgery because it was experimental. And so they would pay for the whole surgery and everything that was there, and it could be done in England. But the problem was you had to get to England, and you had to stay there for a minimum of 8 weeks. And the Suggs couldn't afford to fly one of the parents and the child to England and stay there for 8 weeks without working and then fly back again. So our group that had gotten together, this committee, decided that we would have a city event in our community center. And we had a Sadie Hawkins Day auction. And there's a couple of you here that remember when we did that. We took it from the funny papers, where they had Sadie Hawkins Day races and Sadie Hawkins Day, and that was where the women prepared a basket, a lunch basket, and then the men would bid on the basket, and whosever basket you got, that's who you had lunch with, okay? So we invited everybody from the community. We invited all kinds of people. We had an article in the paper. That was the social media of the day, was the newspaper. And so we had an article in the paper about this whole unjust situation. And people came out really well on that Saturday. We had over 250 people in there. And we sold these baskets, which was really fun. We had a great time. And I, being the pastor and being the kind of person I am, I walked around and was talking with everybody who was there and realized that out of that 250, only about 50 of them were members of Holy Cross. The other 200 were people from the community who knew the Suggs, who wanted to help, who wanted to try and make things right. At the end of the day, through that fundraiser, we raised about $5,000. And I was able in those days to get AAL to match that, and they put another $5,000 with it, so we had $10,000, which in 1989 flew the two of them over there, kept them there for 8 weeks while they did the surgery, and got them back home again. So, something bad that's happened, but God is turning it into something good. The young man lived for a while. He did eventually pass away. That was an early time of the transplant of heart and lungs. But he made it through high school. He graduated high school and was well on his way into his 20s when he passed. But the goodwill that was connected in the community with the family, with everything else, it was God taking something that's very, very bad and making something good out of it. One of the things we've learned as we've lived here together. Next question. This is our second question for today. It has to do with mercy. Now, an easy definition of mercy is that mercy is when you don't receive something or you don't get something that because of your own actions you really did deserve. Okay? We quite often say, you get what you should get. That you get what you get what you deserve. Yeah. So mercy is when I don't get what I deserve for some reason or other. So the question is, when was a time when someone showed you mercy? Or maybe when was a time when you showed someone else mercy? When was a time when someone showed you mercy? Or when was a time when you showed someone else mercy? You can chat on Facebook. You can chat on YouTube if you're watching online. You can text in if you're watching online at 407-842-8884. If you're here, we encourage you to text and not pull up Facebook and start looking at that while I'm talking. So we have question number 2. Let's take a couple minutes and take a look at that. Now, Micah says we are to act justly. We are to love mercy. What does it mean to love mercy? Not just, he doesn't say we're to be merciful. He doesn't say that we're to look for an opportunity to give mercy to someone else. He says we are to love mercy. To love mercy. How does that work? What does that mean? When we finally realize that every day we receive mercy from God, that God is giving us mercy, we're not getting what we deserve each and every day. But then when we make that next step and we love that mercy that God gives so much that we want to give it to somebody else, that we want to show that mercy to someone else. You see, this is what Jesus was teaching the 12 disciples. That's really the training that he came to give them. For 3 years, they walked around with him, and they saw him every day show mercy. Saw him every day reaching out to people and giving them something they didn't deserve. Or seeing to it that what they should get, they didn't get. And that's how they grew as disciples. That's how they grew as followers of Christ. We have any answers to that question, Chris?
So, just a couple of things. Number one, our Facebook feed is down. So we're getting half of the normal viewers that we get, but YouTube is working. Somebody said, when I picked up a little spider in the house and let it go outside, that was extreme mercy.
Yeah, that's it.
We might have to go over what mercy is again,
yeah.
Paul. I don't know if this is, but yeah, so that's kind of impacting some of our texting right now.
Okay. So, it is interesting when we start to see our lives from the window of mercy or no mercy. And you realize that the disciples' training, those 12, were being trained in showing mercy, in loving mercy, and the way of the training was in serving. In serving. To grow in discipleship is what we have learned as a people here for 36 years. Growing in discipleship is not about receiving more mercy from God. It's about showing more mercy. It's about serving the people that are around us. When we serve, we show mercy. When we serve, we're helping people, most often, sometimes, people that don't deserve the help. I started to make a list. I couldn't begin to list over the 36 years all of the serving that has been done out of this congregation. Trips to Panama, trips to Guatemala, where we've served the people that live far from us. Here in the community, where we've rebuilt houses and we've reached out and put on roofs. We went down to Hurricane Andrew back in the day, put up a tent, helped people get food down at Andrew. We've helped clean up with chainsaws after other hurricanes. We've served in so many ways. And in doing that, we show mercy. And when we show that mercy, we get more mercy from God. We grow in mercy. We begin to love mercy, getting it and giving it. I remember one story of service here in town. There was a lady who was single, and she was friends with one of our members. They met her at Mom's Morning Out program. Once again, was not a member of our church. It was not a member of any church. And she found herself with her husband leaving her. She had 3 kids at home. She had her sister with her who was unable to walk and was paralyzed. And so there was just a lot for her to care for. And she had lost her lease in the apartment where she was. But there was a house that her mother had that was here in Lake Mary. And so the member that we had said, is there any way we could go clean that house up for her so that she could move in there with the kids? That sounds like a reasonable request. And when we went to look at it, I took Pastor Matt with me. What kind of house was it, Pastor Matt?
Yeah, it was in rough shape. I think there was literally a raccoon living in it when we went to look at it, because I remember being a little afraid of it.
Yeah. There was a raccoon who came and stared at us right over the top of a whole pile of stuff. Her mother was the definition of a hoarder. We could not hardly get into all the rooms of the house. But while we did walk through it, we saw the raccoon, and we saw several large rats that were there. So we said, okay, we're going to clean this up. A whole group of people came, and we had 2 dumpsters out front, and we spent 2 days carrying things out, throwing them in the dumpster. And then Mark Shyrock came in, and he set up rat traps that we went to every day and emptied. And I personally carried out 7 out of there. Okay, and so then we ended up redoing drywall, redoing the floor, a whole new roof. We had to repaint everything on the inside. Had to pull all the kitchen cabinets out; they were gone, and we put in all new cabinets there. And we did all of that to show mercy. You know, you could argue and say, well, was she really getting what she deserved? You know, because of how she lived her life, because of what was going on, did she really not deserve to have all this bad stuff? Once again, you're thinking about acting justly, loving mercy. What do you do in your life? If you're acting justly and you love mercy, you fix the house. As a congregation, we spent somewhere around $40,000, not to mention all of the time and effort that was donated by Dave Lundberg and his crew as they put a new roof on, by some of the other people that cut trees and carried them away. All the work that was done on the inside and outside of that house. Unbelievable amount of things. But that wasn't the only house that we did that to in the last 36 years. We've had the one that we lovingly refer to as the cat house, which was like 30-some cats that were in there. And it didn't even have a working toilet in the whole house. But we repaired those. To love mercy, we have found, is about growing as a disciple by serving the people that are around us. That's how we grow as disciples of Christ. Let's ask a third question, just in case somebody is seeing and watching out there. When would you say that you had the best relationship with God in your life? When did you have the best relationship with God in your life? Can you remember a time when you had the best relationship with your God? You can text back to 407-842-8884. Whether you're watching online or whether you're here, you can use that text number. Chris will get it. Give us a couple of answers to that. And while we wait for that answer, I want to move on to the third thing that was required, that we walk humbly with our God. When Micah was speaking to the people there, he explained that God required of them that they act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with God. I think that what he was saying was that as you work at acting just, loving mercy, we do it in a close relationship with God, a relationship that understands who God is and who we are, and understands what the world is and who we are. What is our position in the world? What is our spot in the situations that God has given to us in our lives? And how do we walk humbly with God in that situation? We get any answers, Chris, of people?
Well, that's a tough question to
yes, it is.
give people 30 seconds on. But one person said things really changed for him in college, and that's when the type of relationship I have with him now started. Somebody said as a young child in parochial school. That's interesting. And just through life, their faith has grown and grown and grown, as even through the ups and the downs, and that God uses the tough situations to grow our faith. So that was another answer that we got as well.
Yeah. I knew when I picked that question that's a tough question to answer, and it's very hard when you say, well, when has with my relationship with God been very good? Oh. And I toyed with the idea of making the question, when you had the best relationship with your spouse? Okay? Because it's almost as hard to answer that question as it is to answer the question of when have you had the best relationship
Wouldn't
with
you
God?
say, like, right after your wedding?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not, like, the case with God, right after your baptism,
Yeah.
Dennis McGavick said, whenever I am in awe of God's creation and nature, on hikes, on rivers, especially when shared with others.
Yeah.
Great point.
Very good. Very good point. Yeah. When we see the things that God has made, that God gives us. But I think, when I think about the best relationship with my spouse, what I realize is that over the 44 years that we've been married, that relationship has done nothing but grow. And so these answers that said started when I was in parochial school or when I was in college or as I've lived life, that's really how we learn to walk with God. That's really how the relationship we have with God grows, is when we live our life with Him. Just like when you live your life with your spouse, then that relationship grows and we're closer whether you like it or not. You're closer. Whether you worked at it or not, you're closer. And so Micah says that's what we're shooting for when we have with God. And God sums it up throughout the Bible. And the phrase that God uses in the Bible is, he said, here's the relationship we will have. I will be your God. You will be my people. Pastor Matt mentioned it a couple weeks ago in a sermon. That phrase recurs over and over in the Old Testament and all the way into the New Testament. God looks and requires that he be the God and we be his people. That's the relationship. And over the course of the 36 years as a congregation in this place, we have learned that you have to walk understanding that God is God and you're not. That God is God and we are his people. That's the relationship that we are to have. To walk humbly with God, as Micah requires, as he says God requires. To walk humbly is to humbly realize where we are in relationship with God. To see how that acts out. And that walking humbly is to realize that we are not God. That we are not the person that makes all the answers, that chooses everything that happens.